Good morning, Joelle. Okay, so just so everyone knows, I'm recording here, but we are also recording live to Twitch. So just so everyone knows, hello, welcome. We'll go ahead and get started with our introductions. I'm Dr. Haley Austin. I'm a Research and Development Fellow for Transnational Creative Industries at Abertay Uni, and I work on the InGAME International project. So as part of that, we are looking at ways the UK and China can make games together, can help improve and understand the gaming markets of both countries and work together. So as part of that, we're having audio issues on Twitch, B says. I don't necessarily know what to do about that. Oh, working, excellent, thank you, Bees. So as part of the research, we're looking into both gender in the workplace, working in games, as well as studying gender within gaming spheres. So as part of that, we're really excited to host this satellite event with the Women in Games Festival and the Women in Games Conference. So the running order for today is I'll hand over to Dr. Robin Sloan, who will introduce the InGAME International project. Then we'll have Xiaoxiong, a St. Andrews PhD student, talk about her research. Then we'll have Charly Harbord talk about her research. And then we'll have a round table with those two, as well as Stephanie and Emelie from Junkfish. So at that time, there'll be questions at the end of each presentation, as well as the round table. And then do stick around. I do have a survey to send out at the end to see how you thought the event ran, as well as what we can help do for future events with women in games. Okay, excellent. So I'll pass over without further ado to Dr. Robin Sloan.
Hi, thanks, Haley. Can you hear me? Is it working okay? Good. Okay, perfect. So welcome everyone to this Women in Games 2021 satellite event, which is hosted by ourselves at InGAME International and Dr. Haley Austin, who's already introduced herself. So hi, I'm Robin Sloan. I'm a senior lecturer in game design at Abertay University. I think a lot of you may know me already. I'm also the Principal Investigator on InGAME International. Now, as the name suggests, we're part of the main in-game video games creative cluster, which you may have heard of. If you search for innovation for games, that'll come up. And that's based here in Dundee, led by Abertay, along with Universities of Dundee and St Andrews. And while we on InGAME International are part of that Dundee cluster, we're actually a UK-wide and international project, so we're a bit separate from it as well. So we're really interested in engaging with companies right across the UK and Europe, and also companies and researchers in China as well. And as Haley's introduced, our focus is in trying to figure out more about the barriers and the opportunities to working together across the UK and China, both in development, so how do we connect developers in both countries, or how do we connect developers to publishers both ways, or how do we bring researchers together as well to work with industry in both nations. And largely that's what today is about, is bringing people together across those two nations, but also, as Haley's introduced, looking at a really critical issue, which is issues of gender inequality and equity in the workplace, which is obviously a really pressing issue here in the UK, but also an international issue, which is why we're so interested in it. So on InGAME International, we're actually funded by AHRC, which is the Arts and Humanities Research Council. I'm always important that I give them a nod. And we're part of the Creative China programme. There's many other projects that are part of the Creative China programme as well, which are great. If you search for, you'll find out more about them. As Haley has nodded to, our central aim is to kind of develop that collaboration between the UK and China. And while our initial research has been kind of scoping work, so interviewing people from industry and other sectors, and some of you may have already taken part in that work, as well as a lot of desk research, really going forward into the next 2 years or thereabouts of the rest of the project, our focus is going to be much more on engagement with companies, with researchers, and with others involved with games through events, through training, and through other activities that we're going to plan with you. And primarily, one of the things we're looking to do is to do prototyping, which is one of the things that we do so well at Abertay. Again, those of you who've worked with us in the past may know that, because we might have served as clients for our projects, but we're really keen to work with people on prototyping new ideas across the UK and China. If you want to know more about us, we actually have an information event this very week. So we've concentrated all of our events this week and next week, it seems, just to put the pressure on. But on Friday, 17th September, we've got our main launch event where we'll give you lots more information about the project. And I'll post a link into the chat so you could see that. And if you want to join that, would be great to see you there. But in the meantime, I want to hand back over to Hayley and let's take the focus back to her event. And I really look forward to the chat today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Robin. Yes, it's very exciting. And yes, please do join us on Friday if you're interested in learning more about what InGAME is doing. Yeah, perfect. Robin has popped the Eventbrite in the chat. Okay, so without further ado, I will introduce Xiaoxiong Xiong, who is a second-year PhD student at the University of St. Andrews. Her research interest is the internationalization of Chinese gaming organizations, with a particular focus on their internationalization patterns to the Western countries. And she's awesome. Okay, Xiaoxiong.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Xiaoxiong Xiong from University of St. Andrews, and it gives me great pleasure to be here and introduce my research. My research focus, as Hayley has kindly introduced, is basically about the internationalization of Chinese gaming organizations, with the purpose of trying to find first, why internationalized or internationalizing Chinese gaming organizations expand overseas? What are they trying to achieve? And second, what kind of liabilities have gaming organizations envisioned or experienced before and during the internationalization efforts? And what kind of resources or competencies are required to overcome such challenges? And thirdly, what kind of internationalization patterns are apparent in the Chinese gaming sector? So to sum up, the motives, enablers, prohibitors, and the internationalization pattern of Chinese gaming organizations. So currently, there are some extant theories and models on internationalization. For instance, the seeker motive proposed by Dunning, who argued that organizations expand overseas either to seek resource, market efficiency, or strategic assets. For example, the resource seeker refers to those organizations that seek to attempt to exploit the valuable natural endowments that is easily accessible in the host countries, such as oil or cheap labor, whereas the market seeker is rather self-explanatory. And the efficiency seeker refers to those organizations that seek to lower the overall cost or improve their efficiency through global governance with the means of economies of scale or economies of scope. And then there is strategic asset seeker, which is often associated with organizations that seek collaboration or joint ventures with the local partners who often have these valuable and royal resources that is otherwise not accessible to the focal organization. And apart that, there's also one well-known internationalization theory called Uppsala model. In this model, it stresses that organizations suffer from this kind of liability of foreigners while internationalizing. This liability of foreigners refers to the fact of extra costs of doing business abroad as a consequence of competitive disadvantage compared with the local organizations. And this competitive disadvantage, if one takes a step back, is actually attributed to the psychic distance. This cyclic distance refers to the sum of factors preventing the flow of information from the home and from the home to the host countries, which is often associated with spatial distance or the variations in policy, culture, or economic status. And it is often asserted that the greater psychic distance between home and host country, the more liability of foreigners experienced by the internationalized organizations. Therefore, organizations tend to start the expansion with nearby countries or countries with some similarities, such as cultural background. For example, UK organizations more likely to expand to the US countries, or vice versa, or some economic status, such as organizations from developing countries are more likely to expand to developing countries rather than developed countries in the first place. And often the internationalization will begin with the last minute modes, such as agents. It is only when organizations have accumulated sufficient experiential knowledge of internationalization will they be willing to venture to further countries with more convenient modes, such as establishing self-subsidiary or foreign direct investment. So to sum up, there is this psychic distance between home and host country, and then there is liability of foreigners, and then there is the incremental establishment chain with nearby countries and then more distant countries, and from less convenient modes such as export or agents, and then to more convenient modes such as foreign direct investment. But these are all based on manufacturing organizations, which might not be totally applied to gaming organizations. For instance, because games often embody culture, aesthetic, and cultural value of the home country, then it is assumed that public sector presence and support are more common in this industry than the researched manufacturing industry. Moreover, researchers argue that organizations in the creative industry often take cost and price reduction less relevant, believing that price competition is less important because competition in the gaming industry should or is more concentrated on innovative ideas and products. In addition, it is believed that because hits will cover the expense of the misses in the gaming industry, therefore, it might be safe to assume that extend internationalization motives that are mostly economic-based, such as resource sake, strategic asset sake, might have less impact on gaming entities. Second, because games are often experienced products or services, their evaluation depends on their subjective ability to provide pleasure and entertainment to each consumer. This kind of subjectivity leads to a phenomenon called nobody knows, which refers to the fact that neither suppliers are certain their products or services would be liked by the consumers. Now customers know if the focal games could deliver a satisfying experience to them prior to the consumption. So this leads to an even higher degree of risks and uncertainties for the gaming organizations. This might be worsened for overseas expansion because producers have little or no local experience at all to pre-assess consumers' attitudes and little prestige in the host country that can stimulate consumers' confidence in their games. So in this respect, it might seem logical to assume gaming organizations to follow the Uppsala model with incremental internationalization efforts from psychic close countries with less commitment mode to psychic distant countries with higher commitment mode. However, this contradicts the time flies philosophy, where time's passage diminishes product value. For example, if you note that this 1 million investment would generate £2 million return, then definitely this £2 million return tomorrow is better than £2 million return 10 years later. So this might be particularly true for gaming organizations because game development often involves huge amount of investment that needs prompt realization of revenue to keep the organization afloat. Moreover, the incremental method or pattern might not be applicable to gaming organizations because of herd behavior, which is a norm in the gaming or more generally creative industry. This refers to the fact that people tend to follow the trend or buy what others are consuming at this time. This is often attributed to the fact that people might like information about the alternates, and they often have this desire to belong to a social class. And then people might follow and consume a trended game for the sake of accumulating conversational gambit with others. However, this attraction of a game as a conversational topic might be jeopardized by the diffusion speed because of diminishing returns. In most cases, the bigger the fad, the faster the fall. So in this aspect, creative organizations or gaming organizations might be more compelled to initiate more immediate internationalization than those from traditional industries such as manufacturing industry. So you can say this dilemma of incremental and instant internationalization. And it is because of such dilemmas and trade-offs that it is my intention to explore the internationalization of gaming organizations from China. And because of the time constraints, I will just cover these basic points. But if you're interested in the study of more gladly, if you are interested in the following up field work or interview, feel free to contact me. I will share with my screen. Okay. So can everybody see the contact info?
I can't see it.
You can't see it. Okay.
Oh, here we go. Try now. Try again.
Okay. Sorry, just a few seconds.
No worries. Okay, try one more time. I've given the permissions, but we'll see if it works.
You know what? Actually, I will type it in the chat so that the meeting can go smoothly. Again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Xiaoxiong. Yes, claps.
Thank you.
Excellent. So are there any questions for Xiaoxiong about her research? You can raise your hand. Is there the raise hand feature on this? Or, well, I had a question. So Xiaoxiong, in what you've seen so far, what, with China going international, what is the biggest concern? So there, you talked about multiple concerns about foreign investment and these kinds of things. So let's take Tencent, for example. Does it look like more companies are going to use kind of what Tencent is doing and going and buying and investing in foreign games? And yeah.
Well, actually, to my current knowledge, Tencent is a huge, I could say is an exception to the Chinese gaming organization, because right now in the Chinese domestic market, Tencent and NetEase could be kind of regarded as monopolies, where the two countries have covered most of the market share in the organization, in the overall national market, where they have numerous resources, whether financially and in terms of networks. So they could buy or have enough resources to buy or gain access to the strategic assets of foreign countries. However, this might not really be applicable to the Chinese gaming organizations, which are often SMEs, so they might not have this kind of financial gains through the strategic asset seeking. Thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, oh, definitely. That makes sense that Tencent is an outlier and not like most companies. Brian, what's your question?
Hi there. First of all, thank you so much. That was a fascinating way to start a Tuesday. My question is, the Chinese games market is kind of coming to games the opposite way from the West. You know, we have a legacy going back to the arcades and home consoles and PC being the dominant form of gaming, whereas China really seems to have come in with the advent of mobile, which is one of the reasons why Tencent has become such an outlier. Has it avoided a lot of the baggage that the Western games industry seem to have, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion? You know, is it treated more like a tech sector? You know, the games industry in the West tends to be very isolated and cut off from the rest of the creative industries and the rest of the tech world. I'm just wondering what the situation is in China, if they've managed to pick up this baggage or if they've avoided it.
Okay, thank you so much for your question and for your comments. Well, to my current knowledge, to be honest, there are no console manufacturer like Nintendo or the Microsoft in China, where people mostly consume computer games or mobile games, which is, like you have kind of explained, which is why Tencent is so successful in the national market. And the reason why people are less likely to consume the console games could perhaps be attributed to several factors. First, people had no such habit because in the past, you cannot buy the consoles very easily, especially legally in China, which has only been open to the Chinese market very recently. And second, there's still this variation of consoles sold in China and sold in the Western market, where the Chinese console might not have buyers might not have the global access. They only have access to the content that is specifically made to the mainland. So in this context, if I am a consumer, I was thinking, okay, I'm paying you, and yet I'm only enjoying part of the content. Then I might feel a little bit on fire. So I might be less committed to consume such goods, but that's basically my assumption, which has to be approved later. And thirdly, there is this sunk cost of buying consoles, because although the cost of buying consoles have reduced dramatically, still it is a sunk cost which cannot be used for other purposes. However, for computer and mobiles, I don't have to buy any devices specifically for the game. I could use them. I need to use them daily, and I don't have to make this extra investment. So that's probably also why Chinese buyers tend to consume computer or mobile games instead of console games. However, from my perspective, that is also a disadvantage for the Chinese manufacturers, because, like you said, the Western consumers tend to consume console games. And in this respect, there is no console manufacturer in China could be a disadvantage for them as well, because you have to pay this fees or expenses to the console manufacturer when you expand to the overseas market. So in this aspect, you are liable to them. So whether you're successful or not, you need to pay some fees to them, which could make you less competitive compared with, for example, Sony and Nintendo. But that needs to be approved. That's my assumption now. I hope that answers your question.
It does indeed. It does indeed. I just find it fascinating that we have a market which is so large that it has grown internally, and it's now becoming an international force through investment, through acquisition. Tencent has its fingers in so many companies. They've just bought Sumo in Newcastle. They've invested in the last round within Epic. So they're making a big play to be part of the wider games industry. But can I ask one more question? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
It seems as though they're really setting themselves up for the next step forward, which is the whole move into the metaverse. Do you get a sense that this is something that's being embraced within the Chinese industry?
I'm sorry, what universe?
Oh, the metaverse. So the idea that all of the games are going to become interconnected, that we'll have far more going on in games than just entertainment. Tencent are making a lot of moves, as is Alibaba with Alipay and everything. Everything's becoming interconnected. So it's not sorry, my phone's going crazy. It's not a standalone pastime gaming anymore. It's now becoming a ubiquitous part of your life.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. That also reminds me, and the success of Tencent could also be attributed to its vast social network base, because we have this QQ and WeChat, which is basically the two dominating social network platform in China, which is all owned by Tencent. And through this platform, the games could, like I said, go in virus immediately or in no time after the release of the games. And like I said, people tend to consume the game as a conversational gambit. So the more it appears in platform like QQ or WeChat, the more likely more consumers would be willing to at least try it. And for your next question, yeah, I didn't really investigate these phenomenon of Tencent, but to my knowledge now, Tencent has indeed expanded its empire with many businesses. I was thinking it's probably to gain this economy of scope. For example, this economy of scope refers to the fact that you could utilize one resources for multiple purposes, and in this aspect, the expense of the costs of such resources could be covered by multiple purposes, and therefore reduce the cost for the single purpose. And for example, they could develop this intellectual property for a game, and then they could develop it, for example, for a movie or for toys, and this could be all generate enough cash for the future round of development, just like Disney, I think, in kind of terms. I hope that answers your question.
Wonderfully, that's it. And your last point was absolutely bang on. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Xiaoxiong. That was excellent. And thank you for the questions and for answering them so well. Okay.
Thank you so much.
So Xiaoxiong, feel free to type your info into the chat. And if anyone is interested in helping Xiaoxiong with her research, please get in contact with her. So next up for the presentation is Charly Harbord. So Charly is the InGAME International Project Coordinator at Abertay in the Division of Games and Arts. She's also the creator and project lead of the Kilted Otter Initiative, which is a research-based extended game jam, which has received external funding totaling 52.5K from several funding sources, including the Scottish government. She holds the position of the Women in Games Applied Game Designer in Residence. She's a visiting lecturer at Norwich University of Arts and Ontario Tech University. She's also a course contributor and external examiner at Ontario Tech University. She's the applied games designer for the Women in Games Jam, as well as the streamer coordinator and mod for the Twitch channel, which we are on today. Woo woo. She's also published a billion times and peer-reviewed and done keynote talks, and is a woman of many, many, many talents. So, Charly, I'm excited for you to tell us a bit about your research today.
Okay, no pressure there then. Yeah, so my talk is not nearly as technical. So I'll give you a bit of background. I started many years ago. So in 1994, I went to Abertay University when it first became a university and did not like it very much. So then I moved to China and I did a degree in Mandarin and Chinese culture whilst living in China. So da jia hao. And then I came back to Scotland. I did a master's over here. And then I joined Abertay University and I started a PhD in the use of role-playing games to enhance the second language acquisition of Mandarin and English. And I'm in the sort of final throes of writing up. And as I've discovered, what happens with PhDs is when you're at that end point, you start doing new research, and the new research is so much more interesting. So this is where I am right now. So Haley mentioned the Kilted Otter project. After living in other countries for so long, learning other languages, other cultures, I came back home and realized I'd done nothing for Scotland. And I'm very proud to be Scottish. We're a good people, we're a fantastic country, it's beautiful here, but we're not well represented in games or in any kind of media. Scotland is not very well represented in games and media. If you do a Google search, games set in Scotland, I think one of the first that'll come up is Harry Potter. And it's not really set in Scotland. There was just a little bit filmed in Scotland. So it was about bringing an awareness of our culture and our heritage and sharing that with the world. So I designed the Kilted Otter initiative. Because otters are playful, they're clever, they're gamers if they could game, and a kilt because every Scottish lady loves a kilt. It's in our DNA. So the idea that instead of a theme like mother or climate, we would give a research pack. So it's a pack full of different information about Gaelic, which is one of our native languages, Scots Gaelic, our culture, our history, our food, news stories, and we give that to the participants, and then they can create a game based on any of this information that we've given them. And then we thought about accessibility. And if you're not a student, I don't know many people that could devote a whole weekend, let alone a week, to a games jam. I couldn't do it. So we've extended it over 2 months. And what that means is by doing 1 or 2 hours a night or a week, you could create the same level of game as you could in a week or in a weekend. And this means, we've had schools uptake, we've had housewives, people that just want to have a try. Yo-Yo Games have given us a license to Game Maker Studio 2, which means absolutely anybody can pick up the Game Maker Studio, pick up the research that we've given them and just make a game. And that's what we really, really want. So this year, we're focusing just on Scots Gaelic, because in Scotland, I don't know if you know, we have 2, maybe 3 official languages. So the Scots, which is what Robbie Burns wrote in, then the Scots Gaelic, which is nothing like English at all. And then there's Doric, which is borderline an official language. So I'm a Doric speaker. I'm from the northeast of Scotland. Gaelic is not in a good way at the minute. It needs more promotion. It needs more help. So that's why we chose Gaelic. I'm learning Gaelic as well as doing all of the other stuff that I'm doing. And it's an amazing language. It's if you listen to someone speak Gaelic, when they start to speak Gaelic, their tone changes, their manners change. It's a much more lyrical kind of language, a lot more tied into emotion. So it's really quite a beautiful language to listen to. So we're focused on Gaelic this year, but next year we're expanding and we're only looking at Indigenous languages, because Indigenous languages, our dialects are so tied into who we are and what makes us special as people, that when the knowledge holders, when the people that know these stories, that know our heritages, when they pass, and a lot of it isn't written down, unfortunately, little bits of our history go as well. And when I lived in China, I also saw that. So where I lived in Fuzhou, our local language, Fuzhouhua, wasn't accepted as a proper language. You know, it was the language of maybe the uneducated. If you're educated, you speak Putonghua, you speak Mandarin, and you speak English. Fuzhouhua means you haven't gone to school or you haven't gone to university. So there's whole generations that have skipped this little piece of heritage. And so we want to preserve that. So next year, we're hoping to expand to one of the Indigenous languages within China, but also very excitingly, we'll be working with a Maori iwi or tribe to develop these games. And again, Yo-Yo Games are allowing us to share Game Maker Studio 2, so that the people that maybe don't have access or don't have the money for these kind of game maker engines are able to uptake in the game jam. We're also hoping to work with American Indian, the Lakota Sioux tribe, and some of the First Nations in Canada, probably Anishinaabe or Ojibwe. So the idea that, and this is the point, I'm coming on to my new research, which is so much more interesting. It's the use of digital games as a conduit to preserve Indigenous languages, traditions, and cultures. So that obviously some of the traditions are sacred. So you wouldn't make a game about a sweat lodge or a medicine wheel, because these are sacred and really intrinsically linked to a culture. But you can give the tools and the knowledge to these knowledge holders and allow them to make games for themselves. So this isn't a money venture. You know, we're not making AAA games, but we're giving the tools to people to preserve their own heritage, their own culture, but in a way that engages an age group that maybe isn't as involved in their culture as they could be. So it's something that I love at the minute, this idea of marrying something really old and traditional with something really, really modern, and using it in a way that has good benefit, it has worth. And I think that's something that's really interesting at the moment for me. But yeah, first off is the jam, and the jam actually starts on Monday, and we have 31 teams signed up so far. I would have been happy with 10. So, but it's going to be a really good laugh, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're hoping to take the otter worldwide afterwards. So that's kind of what I've got to say. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Yes, thank you so much, Charlie. That sounds amazing. And preserving Indigenous culture and language is so important right now.
Mm-hmm.
And games are the perfect way to, as you said, marry those two, kind of the old and the new,
Mm-hmm.
but also as preserving it almost as an archive, a living
thing,
which is really exciting. Okay, I'll open it up. Are there any questions for Charlie? You can raise your hand physically or hitting the button.
I mean, just to harken what you said there, so the living archive, so a lot of Indigenous cultures tend to have more of a kinesthetic style learning approach, which is seeing by doing. A lot of these practices are not written down because the elder would do the action, you would watch, you would learn how to do it. And that's something that games replicate really, really well. And it is that seeing and doing. So there's a really famous game, TP Kaga, which was made by Carl Peterson, who is one of my collaborators, and he's Lakota Sioux. And it's a game where you learn how to make a traditional Lakota teepee. And it takes you through the steps in this kinesthetic style of learning. So it's, although it's not natural, it's done in a natural way that makes sense to people. And again, it's not a game necessarily to share to outsiders, but it's about preserving. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Verda.
Oh, can't hear.
Hi. Sorry, just the unmuting of things and the muting. How are you all? Thank you so much for the session. Amazing early morning session today. So much enjoying it. And I think this is my first time being on any of the in-game seminars, so this is really exciting for me. Thank you. Charlie, so I'd like to ask you, about the Indigenous Language Project. So are you planning to devise a framework which would mostly work on any language, any culture? Or would it be specifically targeting, the ones, as you've mentioned, the ones Indigenous languages in China maybe, or?
No, I mean, absolutely. So even on my PhD, I made a role-playing game, and I made it once in English and once in Mandarin, and it's to enhance second language acquisition. But essentially, I can take any language and just slot that in. And what I'm not saying is play my game and you will learn Mandarin. What I'm saying is if you're already learning Mandarin and then you play my game, it will help you practice in sort of a conversational style, which is often, missing from second language learning. I can teach you all how to go to, or how to have a lovely conversation in Chinese, but you would be hard pushed finding someone or somewhere that you could practice that with. And the same for the game jam. So this year, because we're only focusing on one language, we're hoping to create the model, and then that will be replicated. So what we're doing, my collaborator in New Zealand, we've created the model, we give that model to my friend in New Zealand, and then she takes that and develops it into a jam. So they would do the research about themselves. So something really important is this phrase, nothing about us without us. And this came from the elder Maurice Switzer from Mississaugas of Scugog First Nation in Canada. And it means that if I talk about myself as a Scot, don't make a game about Scotland, about Scottish history, without having anyone from Scotland involved in that, because then you're not really respectful, but also you're going to miss a lot of really important information. And so the research that would be done for the Maori version of the jam would be done in-house. It would be done by the Maoris. We're just giving the tools and the model. And hopefully, going out to visit them. One of the interesting things, originally we had the idea that the otter, we would pass that to each community that wants to take part, and then they would indigenize the otter. But in some cultures that doesn't work. So in Maori culture, for example, to put any kind of Maori indigenization on an otter or any animal would be quite disrespectful. So they would, I think they're going to make their own mascot, which is fine. And it's about giving them the tools to tell their story.
So I think it's just so amazing that, at the end, it's a general framework, because where I come from, I feel like you wouldn't see many of the native Urdu games or narratives and whatnot, and I think it's just so intriguing, just to have that framework which would give everybody the chance to, I think, expand on it. It's not the base of it, but it's more like an expansion of it, a place where we can communicate and practice. And I think that's the basics of any language, and being done that virtually, because you might not want to join an Urdu server where everybody's speaking Urdu, but they might be just talking about themselves. But a learning platform, I mean, I think it is more interesting.
Absolutely. And so there are, if we look at, like, for example, First Nations of Canada, there are some of the teachings and games that they might make that are very sacred to them, that would not be allowed to be shared out with the community. But there are things like the 7 grandfather teachings, which are 7 animals that represent different attributes. So wisdom, honesty, kindness. And that's a general teaching for everyone. And so that's a game that could be made and shared with the wider populace. So there is the idea that none of this is exclusive. So what I'm not saying is this is about Scotland. Scotland's great, we're better than everyone. No, what we're saying is our country's pretty damn good. Let us share that side of our country. Maybe, because we don't all deep fry food. And that's a really common joke, and it's kind of old now, we have a lot to share with the world, and every Indigenous culture also has that to share with the world. When we're talking about Indigenous countries or Indigenous people, these are people that have tended to be colonized. And so there's a lot of sharing that is not willing to be shared for very good reasons. Scars take a very long time to heal. And it's doing that little bit of reparation and giving people the opportunity to have that little soapbox moment and to share what makes them special.
I totally agree. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Verda.
Excellent. So we've got time for one more question for Charlie, if anyone has one. Okay. Oh, yep, Stephanie.
It's not really a question. I know there's another, like, I guess, subculture with some Abertay lecturers for cultural preservation in games, like the historical games network. I don't know if you've heard about that. So it kind of sounds, because what they're doing is they're using games as a in between to teach history and the culture of countries. So I feel like it might be something worth talking to. I don't know if you know Ian Donald.
Yeah, because we're from Abertay as well.
Yeah. So it might be worth reaching out to him about that, because I feel it would be really good for you, because it sounds like you both kind of on the right idea of just using games to teach and make it more available and out there for the world. So I just wanted to drop that in.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so I think now we will transition into the round table. So this is going to be a discussion between our 2 researchers who presented their research, Charlie and Xiaoxiong, as well as 2 women from Junkfish. So I will introduce both Emelie and Stephanie. So Emelie is a game producer and herder of cats at Team Junkfish. She's been producing games for 2 years with the early success of self-publishing the university project Kinoko. She has a passion for game jams, accessibility design, and paid internships. Heck yeah. Thank you, Emelie. And Stephanie Bazeley is a senior programmer at Team Junkfish who has been programming professionally for games for 8 years. Her games are available around the world, have been nominated for several awards, including a Scottish BAFTA, and are playable across many platforms like the Nintendo Switch, PS4, and PC. So thank you both for joining us. So, sorry, I didn't catch that, Emelie. Oh,
No.
I heard one thing and I haven't heard anything since.
No. But we can lip read.
You could do hand signals and we'll just interpret what you say.
Interpretive dance.
Yeah. It'll be a performance. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Emelie. So, oh, I heard myself. So while we're waiting for Emelie, I'd like to kind of pull from what Charly was saying about nothing about us without us, and kind of bring that into the women in games context. So how important is it? Well, this is kind of not a loaded question. It's kind of an obvious question. Can we discuss how important it is to have women making games when a lot of the UK and Western games culture seems to be a bit more of a boys' club?
Definitely. If you look at the statistics for, you know, who plays games, half are female, half are male. The industry doesn't reflect that, you know. So, and again, pulling from that, nothing about us without us, it's the idea that a man's going to make a game for a woman because it should have handbags and they should be able to, you know, swap their shoes because that's what women like. I mean, that's a huge generalization, but I think, yeah, we should definitely hold more positions within the games industry because then we can make games for women by women. And that, I always think if you take out a certain group, so if it's for women by women, and you put in any other cultural group in there, would it be acceptable? No. Well, then maybe it's not acceptable if you're using women in that way. If I made a game about American Indians, but didn't involve American Indians, that wouldn't be acceptable. But it is okay if a man makes a game about a woman without any women being involved. But that's my little soapbox moment there.
Definitely. Stephanie, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel it's important for us to be able to find a space where we can speak out and where we feel comfortable with our games, because there are some very violent games out there, and I feel that some game decisions and designs that have been made in other games, I'm like, was there a woman involved in that? Because sometimes it's just like, a bit on the nose. But I definitely agree we need to have women in places where they can speak up in design rooms and all forms of development, so they can like make sure that the games that they're creating are for everyone. If that's your target audience, if you're targeting a general audience for everyone, include everyone, like you said. There's no point being like, I can guarantee my little girl's going to love this game because I'm like a dad or something. It's like, that's great, but you know, if you don't have a little girl to test it, or like a girl to help out, you're just kind of blowing hot air. You're just going from like your experience, which again, it's like, that's the importance of having more gender on just all places. So yeah.
And I think it goes beyond just the design and development, also the community that you create. So, you know, I mod on Twitch, and some of the communities, not on the Women in Games Twitch, our community is fabulous, but on other games and other sites, the communities can be really toxic, and particularly in esports for women. Women tend not to use microphones when talking. They only text for chat. They tend to have kind of gender neutral names, because as soon as someone finds out they're a woman, often, well, it has happened that the team will turn around and shoot them, their own team, because they don't want a woman on their team. So the community that you're building as well, I think, is something that needs to really be looked into. And unfortunately, a lot of situations, the people or the games companies or the hosting sites are being reactive. They're not being proactive. Don't wait for an influx of hateful bots into your Twitch. There should be something already in place to stop that. Not reacting to it should be a proactive thing. And I think that's, again, something that puts women off being in these cultures.
Definitely, definitely. Xiaoxiong, do you have a comment on this topic?
No, actually, I totally agree with what you have said, that women should have also a position and should also make a voice in the video game industry, because, like people said, although men could do well in games, but sometimes when they're making games for the women, they could sometimes make some stereotype about what women might like, which is not necessarily true, especially now women have grown a lot in terms of, for example, education and economic power. Their thoughts have also developed, have also grown. So what they have generally, it's nothing personal, just my thoughts. So what men have experienced or accumulated about their expectation about what women might like could be accumulated from the masculine times when women are in a less powerful position. And so I think, yeah, women should have more power and more say in developing games, which, like you said, after all, half of the consumers are females, and they should have their rights to buy what they really like. I think that's my thought. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. It's important to have, as Charlie said, all represented in all aspects. So from the top down, into building the community, into being part of the community, as well as in leadership roles, which is something we just aren't seeing right now. Could we discuss possibly why we aren't seeing women in these leadership roles in games? Stephanie, what's your opinion?
So on average, the video game industry, the average lifespan of working in games isn't very big because it can be a very grueling industry. It requires a lot of work. It's creative work. You're constantly like pushing yourself to learn new things and do this. And I just feel like, some people just either burn out, which is a very big thing with the games industry, which needs address, or they just change their mind and realize maybe games aren't for me. Maybe I just don't enjoy the development process as much as I enjoy playing them. And because with like a seniority and roles like that, it requires experience and time to get yourself into a higher position. And obviously, like the general stigma is tech bros and this is how games are made. So it's definitely becoming better. Like over time, it's becoming like a lot more open. And I mean, personally, when I applied to university to do computer games programming, it didn't even cross my mind about being a girl programmer. I just was like, I like playing video games. I had good friends and family. I was very lucky. So again, it's the support of family to help you start off, to then go on to do more. So there's a lot of aspects that can push someone's career to where they are. And I feel for girls growing up at high school, for me, it was be a vet, be a doctor, focus on these kind of roles. Doing tech stuff and programming that for me was not a thing that was suggested. So it was never like go and make video games as a career option. It was, but I think schools are a lot better because I've been doing a load of work with primary school teachers and I've been doing a lot of workshops and that with just lovely people, and it's teaching kids that you can make games and it's not just programming, it's audio, community, producing, art. There's so many different fields to games that women can easily work in. Like there's no no like role that your gender should stop you from doing in games. And I feel because, like I said, it's just over time they need to gain the experience to become that power position. and I think it's getting better, but it takes time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Emelie, can we? Yay! Okay, I can hear you. Excellent. So we're just talking about why there aren't a lot of women in higher up leadership positions in gaming companies. We're discussing why that might be.
I mean, you get tired as well, and tired of the constant struggle. I think there's a lot of other industries that sort of where it just becomes a little bit more easier, and why struggle every day isn't worth it for your mental health or for other reasons. I think also women and other minorities get outmaneuvered more, and sort of not looked over when going for like promotions and leadership roles and things like that. I find it always amazing when I see women in really high up roles within games companies. But yeah, I think that's sort of one of the big reasons, like a part of burnout, taking care of yourself and sort of, yeah. It's a sad story. Like I think it's a shame. It shouldn't be like this. But I guess that's a big part of it.
I actually asked this question quite a while ago to someone. I met someone reasonably high up in a games company, and they made a joke which I didn't laugh at, but they did, and that possibly tells you what sex they were. I said, so why is the industry predominantly male? Oh, that's because men don't keep taking time off to have babies.
Oh, geez.
Wow. I've never taken time off to have a baby. I didn't even know that was an option. But another thing is women, and the stats to back this up, women, if there's an opportunity for promotion and you've got your essentials, you've got your desirables, women, unless they match all of the essentials, all of the desirables, tend not to go for that position. Whereas males are more likely to say, nah, I'm close enough, I'll go. And so they put themselves more often for promotions as opposed to, and I've done it myself. I've looked at the essentials, the desirables. I don't think that person even exists that has everything. I've not gone for jobs because I felt that I've not really matched the criteria that they need. But I know people who have gone for them when I know I'm more qualified than they are. And it's about that, having that nerve to be able to say, well, what's the worst that could happen? I'll apply for a job. If I don't get it, I don't get it. That's it. And pushing yourself forwards and allowing yourself to be pushed forwards for that as well.
Yeah, it's a confidence gap. And the idea that, well, and as Emelie said, if you're already fighting these things day to day, you're not gonna feel like throwing in something that might be a bruise to your self-confidence or just simply take up more of your time and energy, and without knowing that that's something you're gonna get.
Yeah. No, exactly.
A supportive network as well, like making sure you've got good teammates who would back you up no matter what. Like I think that's very important as well. And obviously with the games industry, it can be quite cliquey, and depending on like departments and that, and especially like a huge AAA company, it's a lot, like there's so many people, there's no way you can know everyone. So it's like trying to find who you're like comfortable with, it's trying to find who's supportive of you. And when stuff like this comes up, they can be like, you should go for that. And I feel like that's very important with just, I mean, anywhere in general, but games especially.
Definitely. Xiaoxiong, what's your opinion?
Well, I totally agree with everyone. Like, I haven't worked in a gaming organization before, but to my knowledge, to my limited working experience in another organization, for me, I think it's about expectations. This dilemma of expectations of your social image and in your career. Whereas for the social expectations, they expect women to spend more time at family, for example, raising children, doing housework. And like Charlie has mentioned, they think, okay, maybe women need to take the maternity leave. They need to spend more time at family, which means their investment, for example, the training and all the support they give to the employee will generate more benefits from men rather than women. But again, like I said, it's a kind of stereotype. Women could also have this ability to do job well, and they do not necessarily have to spend time at family alone. And also, there is also this higher expectation at work, and which as a complement to what I think Charlie has said, whereas women are less inclined to ask for promotion. As for my experience, women need to be so much better than men to get the promotion for same job. And this also happens to the salary, where women could be paid less for the same amount of work than men, which I think is kind of common in, I think, to my knowledge, in my area is kind of common. And like people said, that needs to change, but it definitely needs more time. And also, I think another reason why there are less women could also be attributed to the fact that there are less women leaders, because people tend to promote the jobs, promote people from similar background. For example, I graduate from University of St. Andrews, then perhaps in the future, if I'm recruiting, I might have this preference, although I'm not really allowed to, but I have this natural preference for my alumni, which also happens to gender. If I'm a man, maybe I'm more likely to promote a man because I think I can talk more freely. I can talk with him about footballs, about other kind of games that I think women do not like. And therefore, I have less fun working with them. So therefore, I think that also might be a historical reason. So that's basically my thought. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've always been wondering about that as well. And as you mentioned, leadership, and because there are research on like how we prefer leaders who are tall or sort of come in with an attitude of authority or have a deep voice, like if you mandate the room in that sense. And always when sort of those kind of research comes out, I also wonder how much of that is just inherent, like cultural, like routine, or what we're used to, what we're being projected with, and so when we think about leaders, we don't automatically think about a short woman with a high voice or sort of similar things like that. So I always try to sort of like question my own biases on what I think like a person should be, or what leadership looks like, or what sort of it was just a thought, but sort of I like the fact I like to question myself sometimes, and especially when sort of research comes that sort of say things like this. But yeah,
I fully agree, and I think there's also that very fine line between, if he's a man and he's in charge, he's assertive. If it's a woman and she's in charge and acts the same way, well, maybe she's bossy or naggy, and it is a certain double standard. And as a woman, I'd be reluctant to lead anything because of how you would be perceived and how your actions would be perceived. So, I mean, if we think of female leaders, politicians, they generally don't have a good reputation, but I don't think they're acting any worse definitely not worse than some of the male leaders. So there's that, how we couch ourselves or how we present ourselves and how we're viewed in those positions as well. You're fighting already a prejudice.
Yeah,
I agree.
exactly. And that's where we need help from male colleagues as well, is if they're not going to take a woman's word seriously in a leadership position, then it's kind of like using their bias against them. So a man can say, no, we do need to listen to her, or she is in charge, she does know these things. And that's where we can get help. I think, as we were talking, as Stephanie said, having that community as well. And it's important to it not only be women. Women do definitely need to support each other as much as we can, and other marginalized groups, but we do need men to help us as well. We need allies.
But we also, that when a woman achieves a position, they also need to remember where they came from, to reach back and help the people coming up behind, not to be scared that someone's trying to take your job. Oftentimes they're not, but to always remember, like, to pay it forward, to help the next generation. Maybe the change won't happen in our work life, but it might for the next or the next or the next. And I think that's something really important to remember.
Yeah, I saw someone, I forgot to read the article, but it was, the headline was, female leadership isn't inherently feminist just because it is a female leader. Like that doesn't mean anything really, from a feminist point of view, until you actually take action and sort of are aware of what you're doing and how you behave towards other women in your surroundings. So again, we're kind of more is put upon us.
Exactly. So women in leadership positions often are, if they're not on the glass cliff, essentially, so only put in a leadership position to fail, which does happen a lot. When they know it's going to fail, they'll put a woman in that position. Other times it is sort of this, the woman who gets this position might not necessarily, as B was saying, lift all the other boats. A woman put in that position might be someone who promotes the patriarchal ideas. So just because she's a woman doesn't mean like, yay, right? It is yay, but there, once again, there's more work. It's always more work. That's kind of how it is. But speaking of communities, are there communities that you are a part of right now that support yourself, women in games, women in your sector?
Really, no, I realized. I feel like I've seen a small shift in the industry in general, when it comes to like being part of groups or being part of mentorship programs. So what I've seen more and more is that, especially within the game industry, and in the UK, if we take that as an example, there's more an emphasis on one-to-one mentorship, instead of being like over a group or an organization for sort of women. And I think it's a good change. I think groups are still needed, but I think especially if we're looking at, again, trying to expand women towards more leadership roles, into more specific areas or specialties, I think it's really good if you find someone with more experience who can help you, lead you on that way. But yeah, I don't think in the sense that sort of the organizations are sort of moving out and not sort of important anymore. But I think that's a big shift that I've seen, with Limit Break, Code Coven, Coven, and other more mentorship programs appearing, helping both women and other minorities. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to fly the Women in Games flag here. We do a lot of support and help for females in all aspects of the game industry. And I think it was Stephanie that had said, it's not just being a coder. If you have a skill, there's almost certainly a way that could be useful in the industry, whether it's audio or technical or presenting or whatever. So Women in Games is a really good platform to be able to put people in touch with each other, to network, to find the mentors or be a mentor yourself. But also, it's a good place to go if you're having a problem, because they've seen it all, they've done it all, and it's a really nice supported network. There's also She Plays Games, which is run by Lauren Kay, which is amazing. And I'm a mod for her as well. So there's a lot of these little, maybe not so little, communities and support groups. Sometimes you have to find them yourself. But word of mouth is something that is how I found out about a lot of these things. And more than that, they're such lovely communities in that they're not competitive. So it's not like I'm in She Plays Games, so I can't be in Womanize, or I can't be in Women in Games. There's no competition. It's all, if anyone can help or support, then that's what's happening. So I've put the details for the Discords for Women in Games esports and Women in Games. So feel free to join and think about becoming an ambassador if you're not.
Definitely. Thank you, Charlie. And Verda, we'll get to questions just after we hear from the rest of the roundtable. So
Sure.
We'll get to you after that. Stephanie, what do you think?
As the others have said, there's a lot of spaces for it, the mentorships like Limit Break, there's a lot of places where women can reach out. I think social media, it can be good and bad. Obviously, Twitter comes with its pros and cons, but in general, it's a very nice space. You see a lot of just senior game devs who have like their DMs open. So they're like, if you need mentorship or just want to talk to someone, they will happily help out and reach out. There's, the UK games industry Slack. There's a bunch of other places where you can just find other people in your field and your profession who will happily reply. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone not be answered to someone. So it's really nice just being able to have all these organizations and that to help out. So just echoing what everyone else has said.
Excellent. And Xiaoxiong, what about in your experience?
So again, like I said, I have no experience working in the working organization, but if it is possible, I could use one internationalization concept called liability of outsidership to as an explanation point. It argues that while doing business, organizations are supposed to be in this web that is composed of, for example, suppliers, buyers, and other subsidiaries, agents. And it is only when you are inside this web that you could get access to the buyers and all the buyers' friends and relatives. And in this case, if you are outside this leader vibe, whereas you have no access or limited access to the current leaders, then you have very limited access to their friends or to their information, and therefore you might have been in a disadvantage as compared to others who have this kind of network, who, like I said, are often men because they could probably interact with each other outside the workforce, and therefore more likely to gain the information, promotion information in the first place, and also be more likely to get the job. So I hope that's clearly.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
At St. Andrews or in any of your studies as well, have there been communities for women in management, women in tech, anything like that?
Honestly, I haven't deliberately found any community because, to be honest, many of my PhD friends from this school are women. So basically, I'm already in this women group.
Yeah.
So people are really supportive and really friendly, and it's really easy to communicate, and we could share all these thoughts, and they would give me a lot of feedbacks and suggestions that prove really valuable to my project. And if I'm participating in women group, maybe this counts one.
Yeah, exactly. And Charlie, what about yourself as a researcher? Are there communities for women in games, women in tech, women researchers?
I honestly don't know. As a researcher, I've done a lot of collaborations, and I've had the opportunity to work with some really amazing people. And the gender has never really come into it. I've just reached out to people that their papers have spoken to me. I think there's definitely in our field more male researchers, but it is the idea of helping others. So you read a paper and that paper speaks to you, so you reach out and maybe you can work together on a new idea. But I know Women in Games, we do have a research department, and so Sharon Tillini Sage is now the director of that, and so she would be a really good person if you wanted help or support in that area. But I don't think there's, that I'm aware of, a specific female researchers in games group, which is a shame. Maybe we should start one.
Exactly. Yes, I agree. Okay, Verda, what was your question for the group?
So it was question and a comment. Basically, from where I come from, I'm from Pakistan. So I feel like so I have an engineering degree, but me and my husband at that time decided that we wanted to develop a game. So after 4 years of pure software development and knowing nothing about game development, because we didn't have a course then, and we just found out from some some seniors that they're working in a game studio, and this is how you can do Unreal, and we just started looking at things and we developed a game in a year. And I feel we were given that platform where, like, education wise as well, like, because I know that Abertay is one of the most fast forward universities in all over the globe to have such huge game network. And I feel if I could lies on maybe somewhere back home and bring that connections and that platform, even, and because now so very much, because it's, since everything's so virtual, and I would love to have that part of connection, encouraging women to be more in games. And I think, even as Charlie said, like, we do have so many students in games, but very less. I think apart from Charlie and myself, I don't know many of other students who are in games and doing a PhD. So
we've got Joelle and Xiaoxiong here as well. So
no, I meant from, sorry, I meant
there's two more. No, I'm just saying, even
from
when
Abertay that I'm aware of. I'm sorry for that. Yeah. So just anything that would connect. And I think if this is the platform where even I could be an ambassador and connect people from back home to a wider audience, because I know there's so many creative people out there back home who are so good in art, in 3D and whatnot. So really interested to see how we can take this along.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions from the audience for our roundtable? Oh, perfect. Yes, thank you. Charlie's popped the ambassador's link in for anyone interested in becoming an ambassador for women in games.
I mean, absolutely. I think everyone should apply. It costs nothing. And the support that you will get, there's also, I think it's £100 to hold events, and you can team up with maybe 2 or 3 people and you can hold a bigger event. So it's a really great thing. So if you get the chance, I would heartily recommend everyone applies to become an ambassador.
Any further comments or questions from anyone? Oh, hi, Ka.
Hi, Ka.
Hi. I thought it's time that I should say something. Yes, yeah, because I have a lot of opportunities to, speak to Charlie before. We were in the Women in Games Ambassador only event, and in the before event prep, we spoke a lot about women in games. Yes, we do have a support group in Asia. We have a W Coffee that is run by, I think, 5 hosts right now. 3 of us are ambassadors to women in games, and we are facing slightly different challenges from what we face in the West. Or I think there are regional challenges. Of course, several of the topics that came up just now about, women having a caregiver role that is deemed to take their attention and time away from their career. I can relate to that a bit, but at the same time, I do also think that there are men out there that face similar challenges. I know of men, even in games, that they are also taking on caregiving responsibilities along with their partners. But even doing that and, like asking to take time off to bring a sick child to see a doctor, sometimes for them it's so difficult to bring out in with their colleagues because they are deemed, like, why are you not asking your spouse to do that? Why are you the one? Like, make them less of a man if they take on such responsibility. So I think it is, this is not about women only. I think there are men that wants to do something about it, wants to contribute equally in their, personal lives, but they are being judged in a less they are being judged and they are not comfortable about sharing it. We should have a more inclusive conversation with them. Of course, I can totally relate to the joke that Charlie made just now, because we had similar issues. We have calls with people in the industry. For men, it's okay to turn up in a hoodie, like, okay, it's programmer, that looks cool for them. But for women to turn up in the hoodie, I have friends that were being told like they look, let's not use that swear word, so they look not so good on camera. So I think we have to overcome this. There are programs out there about supporting women, growing their careers, giving them more confidence. But I just want to make this point that women is not the one with the problem. It's the industry as a whole, the environment as a whole that we need to fix, and there are mindsets that we need to change. While all this program, all this support that goes into encouraging women, I just want all the women to know that you are not the problem. We are giving you a lot of support, and but we have to recognize that what we need to fix is the environment itself, and how contribution is being judged by a team. These are areas that we need to gradually change, but we cannot wait for the society to achieve this level of equality or fairness. It doesn't mean we stop fighting. I still believe that we still need to take baby steps. We are a bit better off than 5 years ago. We are still very far from where we should be, but we should continue to work as a community and support each other. So I think that is my take on this. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, I completely agree. We're not the problem, but we can help support each other and help change the environment, help change the attitudes. If not, hopefully to benefit us, but if not for us, for the generation behind us, for the girls growing up that are going to see women in these positions where perhaps we didn't see them at all before.
I wanted to share one more thing. I think whatever I'm doing has a positive impact on my daughters. I have two girls, aged 9 and 11. They have coding sessions in school, so she signed up for it. They have robotics club and all that. She didn't see herself as, didn't see programming as a gendered interest. So I enjoyed that she go to class and she said, I made the robot do something after 3 hours of doing, whatever the instructor taught them to. And she did not see herself as not being able to do it, or this is not an interest for girls. So I think that is a positive step, that she just took away everything about gender and look at personal interest, personal ability of herself and of her friends. So she, I think this is an important first step. So I want to, for the next generation, I believe we are paving the way for them. I hope that they can make more advancement in their lifetime than us. But if we do nothing now, it means that they don't have any role models to look up to. I want to believe that I sort of inspired them somehow from their childhood. And this goes into when they become women and they are empowered to make, better advancement for not only women, but diverse genders in the industry.
Heartily agree with you, Ka. And as a mother, I have a son, and it's not just about empowering women, it's also about teaching boys that, women are just as powerful as men. And so he sees the work that I do and how I'm achieving things, and he understands that there shouldn't be a gender disparity. So it is that kind of education is always going to be key to making any change, I think.
Definitely. It's, once again, it's not only about educating and helping women, but doing the same for men, so that everyone can have a level playing field and an understanding of the challenges. Yeah, definitely. Any other comments, questions from anyone? Okay, excellent. Well, if you have one, do just let me know. But one of the ideas that has come up a couple times today is that perhaps we can make our own, community, a smaller community within the larger Women in Games community. So I'm going to send out, I've got a survey here that is about the event today, what you thought of it, but there's also a section about whether you would be interested in being paired up with another woman from today's event, or who was interested in today's event, to have a virtual coffee. So to kind of build community, get to know more people, because once again, with everything being virtual, it's hard to, see someone in the hallway and go, oh, I didn't know you were making games, or, something like that. So I'll pop this in the chat. Yes, and as Ka said, please join please join them as ambassadors. It's a really great way to meet more women. I've put my application in, so I'm very excited to see if I can be part of that community. But yeah, I'll pop the survey in here. So if you are interested in meeting anyone else, kind of smaller from this event or any of our other events, do fill out that form for that. I'll also go into kind of some of the other events that we've got. Of course, they're all this week. So on Friday, if you're with Abertay, how many women here today are part of Abertay Uni? Xiaoxiong, you count as well. So we've got Verda, Xiaoxiong, Charlie, Joel, Safio has graduated, perhaps. Well, so if you're part of Abertay, there's going to be a coffee, a physical coffee on campus this Friday from 3 to 4 for women in cyber tech, games, all of that. So you're more than welcome to come to that and network with women at Abertay across these kinds of tech sectors. And then finally, we've got the in-game informational event. If you're interested, Robin popped that link in the chat. I'll pop it in again, just in case you're interested in learning more about the InGAME International awesome, thanks, Safia. The InGAME International project. Now I can't find it. So if anyone would like to say anything while I waffle at my computer trying to find the link.
I would say, like, through being an ambassador of Women in Games, the opportunities that I've had through networking. So I think that the most prestigious of which was working with Sandra Castro from Tangrande, Uganda, which is a women game jam organization in Latin America. And I actually gave a presentation for ONU Mujeres, the UN, on games. And that was amazing. And it was because of Women in Games and the community that we build and the connections that we make through the ambassador program and all the events that we hold. So even just for having these opportunities that you would never even dream of, I would really, really recommend. And again, it is that philosophy that I live my life by, which is, what's the worst that could happen? Yeah, okay, I'll give that a try. I'll we'll see what happens. So there is so much opportunity, and putting yourself out of your comfort zone, which I think is something really important as well.
Definitely. And I guess my final question, I'll open this up to everyone. We'll go through the panel first. If you are going to work for a company, maybe not even necessarily a games company, what can they do to show that they're actively recruiting women? Other than, the little line at the bottom that's like, we can't legally discriminate.
Maybe having like a page of who's like your company and like the higher ups and the teams, like maybe show who works at your company so you can see how diverse that company actually is. So you can like be able to just pop onto their website when you're doing a bit of research for the company, be like about the team, and you can see that the team is quite diverse already, which does show it's open to, because I think it's quite hard to be like, we hire women, because that also just kind of is a red flag of that's not like, because it's like it's important to obviously hire women, but you shouldn't be just hired because of your gender. You have to obviously be the skills in that. So it's more just like the company itself and how it presents itself on social media, how it looks online. Like, does this look like a company that is diverse and inclusive? Does this look like a company that you would want to work for? Because nine times out of 10, you're able to find if this company is for you, has people that you feel comfortable to work with, versus a company that's like very hidden or like just very much the copy paste of text and the blurb of we are diversity, inclusive, blah, blah, blah. It's like, cool, you can say that, but the proof's in the pudding.
I fully agree. And also I think with the industry and also with the academia of it all, it's still small enough where, reputations are, you can find someone who knows someone who works there. So a lot of the time, maybe they're saying we're all inclusive and this is a great place to work, but you might know 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's probably 2 steps of Kevin Bacon. You will know someone who has worked there. So I think professional reputation and reputation of workplace is something that's really important within this industry and within the academia as well, because, you know, people are honest and generally about how they feel about their work. And it's very, very easy to find out. And I think I can't think of anyone that I know that has gone for a new position without doing a wee bit of a scope first and a reach out through the networks. Now, hey, what about this place?
Any other thoughts? Okay, excellent. I'll just open up the floor once more if anyone has any final comments, questions, concerns, celebrations.
I would say if you're looking to get into the industry or you're looking to get into sort of university or research in this field, often it's a foot in the door. You get a small opportunity, and I would say if it's not going to risk everything for you to take that, I would always say take that chance, because then you get known, then you get your reputation, and you might find that develops into something bigger, or you get more and more opportunities. So don't ever discount that foot in the door opportunity.
Definitely. Okay, excellent. If you'll all join me in clapping and thanking our speakers and roundtable people today. Yay. Thank you very much. Soft virtual golf claps. Excellent. Oh, thank you all so much. This was excellent. A great way to start the morning. And yeah, let's get some more ladies in our community.
And thank you for organizing it, Haley.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
I love ladies and events. So works for me. Thank you all for being here, and I'll just pop the form here once more into the chat. If you'd be so kind as to fill that out, that would be really helpful for us for our future events. And if you're interested in getting coffee with anyone virtually. So thank you all for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you at the future Women in Games Festival events. Now it's my turn for interpretive dance. Thanks, Robin. Bye. Thank you, Ka. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, Ka. We'll have a virtual coffee soon.
Yes, yes.
I'll have real coffee, but we can be talking virtually.
Yes. Yeah. Have a nice day.
Have a fabulous day.
Have a nice day. Yes. I'm almost evening here. Yay.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Woo. Thank you all. That was lovely.
Yeah, you did a good thing, Haley.
Oh, thanks.
It was very good.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for participating. I know, as you said, even you're busy, but you're also like, gotta do all these events, and you know, there's so much more on top of it. So I really, really do appreciate everyone's time.
No, thank you so much. It's important that we have these, and it's really interesting to sort of get to know other people in other sort of adjacent sort of everything that connects us is games, but it's so different. So it's really nice to meet you, everyone.
Yeah, you as well. You as well.
Yeah, it's just thanks for organizing. Thanks to Robin for reaching out to us and for having us on the roundtable. It was very cool. I learned so many cool things as well, especially about China, because the Chinese games industry is like so difficult to get into as an indie. So that was really like insightful to learn as well. So thank you very much for that. It was really good.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Okay, I'll stop recording, I think. Oh, and I was about to say, B, thank you very much for taking us off. Oh, she's gone.